This is Dennis Ramundi. I'm here with my co-host, Phil Goldberg. Our podcast and YouTube channel, Spirit Matters, found at spiritmatterstalk.com. And if you go to YouTube and you want to see us and not just hear us, just put in Spirit Matters Talk, those 3 words, and we'll pop up. And I want to thank everyone out there who's sent in any contributions to help keep us on the air so we can remain free and open to the public. And right now, at least 300 plus interviews in our archives, and tremendous guest. And another tremendous guest today, back on the show, Reverend Paul John Roach. He's a native of Wales who has served as a Unity minister since 1988. And he hosts a weekly radio show, World Spirituality, on Unity Online Radio. And we'll have all of that posted up. But today we're going to be talking about his new book, Unity and World Religions. Fascinating read, and I think especially for our listeners who are interested in contemporary spirituality, much to discuss. So thank you so very much for taking the time to come on, Paul.
A pleasure to be here, absolutely.
Paul, welcome back.
Thank you, good to be back.
The first time you were on, we asked you to give us an overview of your own spiritual journey. So we won't ask you to do that again, and we'll refer our listeners and viewers to our first interview with you if they want to hear more of your personal story. Since you've been back, since you've been on the show, you retired from your ministry.
Right.
And you maintain your radio program, where I've been a guest at least twice, maybe 3.
Yes, absolutely.
And now you have this new book.
Yes.
Unity and the World Religions. Got double dose there. Tell us what brought you to write the book.
Well, you know, ever since I was a kid, I loved the mystical path, you know, and as I grew up, I noticed the mystical path could be found in all religions. And I love Jesus. I love the religion of Jesus rather than the religion about Jesus, because the religion of Jesus is a very mystical path, practical mysticism. And I found the same thing in Hinduism and Buddhism and other traditions. And so when in my ministry of 30 years at Unity Church of Fort Worth, you know, I would teach from the Bible, but also teach from an eclectic group of other wisdom traditions. And so over the years, I've collected a large amount of information, but more important, a large amount of experience, because I've practiced certain elements of each religion, especially Hinduism and Buddhism. And so when I came to the end of my career, I thought it'd be a shame if all this knowledge that I'd accrued and all this personal understanding, you know, personal experience was not shared. So I thought it'd be wonderful to put it together in a book. And I wanted to focus on the 5 universal principles of unity, which are not just in the unity movement, but are universal principles. And so I've used that to underpin the book, and I've explored the religions from those great principles. We also look at suffering and how religions deal with that. And we look at this golden thread that threads through all religions. Aldous Huxley, of course, famously called it the Perennial Philosophy. And I just love that. It excites me. And I was happy to write the book around that. One of the things that I wanted to avoid was it being dry as dust, you know, because I read a lot of books like this, and it's, oh my goodness, a lot of information, but I wanted to keep it juicy. And one of the greatest compliments I got was somebody said that it was like having a conversation. Reading the book was like having a conversation with a very intelligent friend. And I thought, well, that's a heck of a compliment. You know, it's nice to be thought to be intelligent. But I, all the way through my writing in the book, I was thinking about somebody listening to me as I wrote, you know, and having a conversation with somebody on paper. And so I'm glad that the person felt that. And other people have said that too. It's approachable. So yeah, the book is an approachable examination, overview, if you like, of the world's religions. We go into depth in some, less depth in others. But I think it's helpful for anybody that hasn't really got may know something about one or two religions, but not the whole gamut. And then we also talk a little bit about the future of religion, and some of the stresses, some of the challenges that are facing us in that regard too. So it covers a lot of ground in the book.
Right. I would say it's an easy read, but it's very thought-provoking. And
Yeah,
if you start thinking about what you're reading, it's not so
yeah,
easy. They're very profound
yeah,
point.
yeah.
And I think it was in your last chapter, in regard to the future religion, there was a segment in there where you talked about, as I recall, human beings being unique in that they have self-awareness. And
Yeah.
that's a blessing and a curse, because with self-awareness comes the awareness or knowledge that you're separate or different. And we're talking about unity and ultimate goal of unity like that. Could you expound on that a bit?
Well, separation, or a sense of separation, as we would say in unity, is a gift in disguise, right? And the fall is not a fall backward. It's, as Eric Butterworth, the great unity writer and the minister, said, it's a fall forward. So when you have a sense of separation, there's a sense of loss, from the unity of experience, the Shangri-La, whatever, the golden age. But you can't return, can you? You can't come home unless there's a sense of having left home. So in a sense, therefore, it's a blessing, right? So I think the Bible, for instance, is a journey from this sense of loss, in the Garden of Eden, all the way to Revelation, where there's that sense of unity there again at the end, where the healing waters and the river and the trees of living truth and power are there in our souls, because this is an inner journey from that sense of being bifurcated, as I like to say, split off from our oneness, home to oneness again. And we feel it all during our lives. You have those moments, where you make connection to oneness, and then you lose it again. You fall into the trap of them and us. But really, it's a gift, I think, that God gives us, because it's part of free will too. We get the choice to see the dark and the light, and the ultimate journey is to bring the dark and the light together as one. T.S. Eliot said at the end of the Four Quartets, he said, the rose and the fire, come together as one. He's talking about the beauty and the horror come together in our unity, and that's always the work we have to do, right? To marry those two together.
Paul, the book, a lot of people have written about the perennial philosophy and, of course, comparative religions.
Right.
You are doing it within the framework of unity, unity with a capital U, meaning the Unity Church or the Unity movement, right, of which you're an ordained minister. This golden thread that you talk about that runs through all the traditions that the perennialists identify as well. Would you say that unity, the founders of unity, Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, did they acknowledge, did they recognize back in the 1800s the golden thread you're talking about, or is this something you're seeing from a current perspective?
Oh yeah, very much so, I believe, because they were eclectic in their own right, and studied from many traditions, right? From the Buddhist tradition, the Hindu, from the esoteric tradition. They came out of Christian Science, what was called Christian Science then. We call it New Thought now, because Mary Baker Eddy took out a copyright, on the term Christian Science. But there's a sort of scientific basis to New Thought. It's practical spirituality. So yeah, I think they were very well aware. They were definitely Jesus Christ centered, but they understood Jesus Christ in a spiritual way, not in a literalist way. And so yeah, they were very open, I think, to this perennial philosophy. In fact, they were present at the first Parliament of the World's Religions, back in 1893, when Swami Vivekananda got up and did that amazing speech there, welcoming, really connecting Hindi tradition to the West for the first time, in that overt sense. So they were there for that. And I think as Charles and Myrtle, especially Charles, I think Myrtle always had this deep mystical connection. But as Charles grew older, his books became more and more unitive, more and more mystical, more and more talking about this perennial philosophy. And he was always intent about, it's not good enough just to know it, in the head. You have to really live it and feel it and experience it in your heart. And I think that's what excites me. And in the book, I've shared throughout the book my own personal experiences of the unitive experience, the perennial philosophy, and how it's worked for me. So I think that makes the book a little different. It's not just a reporting of information. It's a sharing of my own particular experience about world religions and the essential connection, the golden thread within them.
Right. I'm curious, when you came up with the title Unity in World Religion, in the book, it's clear why you call the book that. But when you see the title, you often think, or at least I thought, Unity in World Religions. Well, religions, the various sects, have been the major cause of division in the world from time immemorial. So where does that head? Do we head to a point where all religions unify under common principles, and it's not necessary to have various religions, or do they keep the various religions and the folks within those religions evolve so they see the unifying principles of their religion? Because again, if you mention religion, you can't mention it without thinking of division in the world.
Absolutely. And really the book is a call to rise up beyond that. We talk about some of the differences and some of the aberrations that we see in various religions. I talk about fundamentalism. I talk about the fact that Christianity has had a checkered history, for example, and so does some other religions. So we don't shy away from that. What we're trying to avoid, though, is some kind of syncretic idea, which makes all the religions one, right? We're not about that. It's not unity in that sense. You must all believe the same thing. We honor diversity. Diversity is healthy, just as anybody living in a community. There's a variety of people, a variety of shades of understanding and the way we look and the way we act. So we celebrate that, but we all share a commonality. We all want to be kind to our children. We all want to get along. We have the same higher virtues, and that's what we're talking about. Is the unity of deep core purpose of our lives, right? And of course, the essence of it is love, I believe. And we talk a lot about this in the book. That compassion and love seem to come out all the way through as the highest virtues, and that's the unity we're talking about, not making everybody think or feel the same way about things. No, it's a celebration of diversity. I think that's important.
But Paul, we've talked about what you call the golden thread. Maybe we should dig down a little bit in that for our listeners.
Okay.
What is the golden thread?
I think it means many things to many people, probably, again, and that's the thing about unity. We say it's hard to pin down unity. What does it mean? Because I think unity, both as a movement and as an idea, the idea of unitive understanding means different things to different people, right? And that's okay. I think we have to rest in the questions sometimes and not have all the answers. That can be equally rich. So we're not trying to come up with definitions of what things are, but rather an experience of it. If I have a mystical experience, say, as I've had, in nature, where something has happened and I see the unity of everything, and I feel the joy and exuberance of life, that's unique to me. I can't put you in the same situation, expect you to have the same unitive experience. It's not going to happen. But you'll have your own. You may have it in a different context altogether. But that's what the important thing is, I think what you may experience in your unique way and what I experience are probably similar in their essence, in their core, but we get to it in different ways. So I think the golden thread is a bit like that. We are unwise to try and define it. It's like the Tao, the Tao that can be explained as, or, talked about is not the true Tao, right? And I think this is the same with the golden thread. We have to treat it with a certain delicacy, a certain tenderness here, because otherwise, like I can't force you to love the same way I love, right? I don't even know how I love. I just do it from my own personal experience and volition. And I trust that you do it. But I think what we're touching when we do love is probably the same core that God has poured out into us from the beginning of time. So, yeah, we don't want to define everything.
Right. Question. Many, if not most religions have a tremendous amount of ritual associated with them.
Yes.
From your experience, is ritual something that leads to unity, or is it something that actually works against unity?
Both.
Okay, elaborate. Yeah, that's
yeah. It's famous in the dead rituals. I tell a story in the book about the people on an island who couldn't do the rituals right, so they got a cardinal to come over to teach them how to do it rightly, and he spent years to teach them. And as soon as he thought they got it, he left across the sea back to Rome. And only about an hour later, they'd forgotten the ritual again. So they started rushing after him across the sea, and they were walking across the water. And he looks back at them and they shouting, "Please come back, we need your help. We've forgotten the ritual." He says, "Listen, if you can walk on water, you don't need rituals, you don't need me." So, I love that story because,
great story.
Yeah, that's basically sums up what ritual is about. Ritual can be wonderful. I love certain Hindu rituals and honoring of certain gods, right? Other people may think that's total idolatry, but ritual can be a portal, or it could be a barrier, So we have to use discernment and wisdom. And I think when you get too overly involved with ritual, then there's always that cleansing, right? There's the iconoclasts. They come and break the idols down. They sweep everything away. They go from one extreme to the other. The Buddha was a reaction to the overly ritualistic Brahmin priests of his day. George Fox of the Quakers, it was in reaction to the deadening liturgy of the Anglican Church. So there's always those people that come along and break down the ritual, but I think it can be useful. It can be very enhancing to our spiritual path, as long as we don't get hooked on it and think that's the only way to reach the divine.
I want to add that I think that the story you told, that little allegory, was written by Tolstoy.
Is that what it's? Yeah, from the kingdom of God is within you, I think.
Something, yeah, I don't remember, but I do believe he composed that or related a traditional story.
Right.
Paul, now that the subject of ritual comes up, and Dennis asked if it leads to unity or division, and you said both. Tell me if you've had the same experience I have. If you bring people together who follow different paths and different traditions, and they share rituals, the rituals are different. The division will come up if people say, well, we're doing it the right way and you're not.
Right.
And our ritual is better than yours. But the unity comes because whoever's doing the ritual will have a similar experience. Is that, and there's something about that brings people together when they share rituals. Do you find that?
If it's done sensitively, I think that's true. That's what the interfaith movement is attempting to do, right? Is to bring people together in a gentle way where we honor the differences, but we participate. We appreciate their dedication, and hopefully they appreciate ours. So it doesn't always work, because you can't force people to think a certain way. But when it does work, I think it can be quite remarkable. So yeah, I think that's the aim. You're right.
Paul, you've been a minister since 1988, a lot of experience, I'm sure, a lot of interaction with people. Somebody
Mhm.
comes to you and they say, I'd like to pray. I've heard a lot about prayer. What would you recommend to them? I've actually spent some time recently speaking to different people from different traditions about what they mean by prayer, what they do. I'm curious what you would recommend to people, or what you do yourself or don't do yourself.
Yeah, that's a good question, because there are a million ways to pray, right? And of course, from the unity perspective, we pray affirmatively. We're not begging people or beseeching God so much as aligning our consciousness with God. So, I would phrase my prayers, and I like to do spontaneous prayers. We do a lot of spontaneous prayers in unity rather than rituals or liturgy. And begin, in a very natural way where we are right now, and go from there. But tell you the truth, I invite people to pray with me rather than me pray with them, because some people are just ready to pray. Actually, they're ready to say something, but they're a little afraid. So when they ask, will you pray? Sometimes they want to actually pray, and then I can join in with them. That's not always the case, but I like to give people the opportunity to open their hearts in that way, rather than me trying to tell them or pray for them. I think there's a difference there, but the bottom line is it has to be natural, right?
Right.
Prayer is not difficult. It's just the soul opening its mouth and its heart to the universe, and it's a natural thing. I think if people are afraid of it because they think there's a special technique or whatnot, and of course there's a million techniques in prayer, and if you're willing to practice those disciplines, you can follow those techniques. But essentially, it's natural. It should be natural and spontaneous. I think it was Meister Eckhart that said, if the only prayer that you ever say in your life, right, is "Thank you, God," then that would be enough. And that you can't get more natural, simple than that. So I think he's right. But it's a big subject, that prayer subject, and I talk about it at length in the book, because it's one of the five principles. It's number 4 of the 5 unity principles, and it's common to every single religion. There's no religion that doesn't emphasize prayer and meditation. So yeah, it's the I think Charles Fillmore called it the most highly accelerated mind action known to humankind, which I like. The most highly accelerated mind action. That's pretty cool.
I hope I'm not getting this wrong, but I think the writer Anne Lamott said there are essentially 3 prayers: help, thanks, and wow.
I like that.
I hope I got that right.
Yeah.
Paul, in the book, an organizing structural motif is the 5 principles of
Right.
unity. Can you tell us how these 5 principles came about? Because it's not something that was in the origins of unity as such, and what they are.
Yeah, they've always been there in the core principles, the core teachings of unity. But I think in the 70s, I think it was, where the unity movement was trying to come up with something relatively simple but all-encompassing, that people who are new to unity could get their heads around as the essence of what unity is about. And so we started calling them the 5 principles, and they started showing up in various forms. And I think they've morphed over the years in the verbiage, but the essence is the same. And the verbiage I use in the book, I think, is the latest one, the latest iteration of it. But basically, they sum up our viewpoint towards the universe and who we are and our role in it. There's one presence, one power. There's no dualism. If God is all powerful, omnipresent, etc., there cannot be an opposing force. So that there's no devil in unity and the unitive idea. There's evil, maybe, which is a twisting of the good in our own hearts, but not as a power. So and then leading on from that, if there's only the one presence and one power everywhere present, then I'm part of that. So I have my essence is the divine, is oneness. So that's the second principle. The third one is that we look around and we see the way the world works, according to these universal laws, the laws of reciprocity. What goes around comes around. The wheel of dharma, and the wheel of samsara, actually, in Buddhism, is the same. The wheel that leads us into trouble is also the wheel that frees us. That's one of those conundrums, and that's a lot. We talk a lot about conundrum, by the way, in the book, because we have to be comfortable with paradox if you're going to be on the spiritual path. I know you wrote a book about that, Phil. And the fourth principle is prayer and meditation, to connect to God. And then finally, it's action. It's none of this is any good unless you're willing to put it into practice in your life. So they're really overarching. They sound very simple, but really, if you start to apply and live all these principles, then your life's going to be totally transformed. Because you move away from duality to oneness. You accept your own divinity. You understand the subtlety of the law and how it unfolds. You connect to God through prayer, and then you live it. So it's a full system right there. And you see it. I've explained in depth how you see those 5 principles showing up in each religion in their own different ways.
But by the way, you both mentioned before some fundamental prayers. I've also heard it said the one and only prayer is "Let Thy will be done, not my will, but Thy will." And
Yeah,
so I think that you can get they all go to the basics. But my question is, as a unity minister, I mean, in my religious upbringing, in Catholicism, there was as much talk and more talk about what happens in the afterlife than in this life. I have a real emphasis on that, and they don't always do it in the affirmative way. As a unity minister, when you preached or talked, or so it was a funeral, somebody talked about the afterlife. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, we believe in the continuity of life because, we don't think that life and death are the two contradiction, the two opposing forces. It's birth and death. Everything that's born is going to die, but life continues. So life is the continual presence, and so when we're born into this frail and temporary human body, but we are more than that because we are life itself, and the spark of divinity that's within us is going to continue. How it continues is a subject of conjecture, right? Some people say that we go to heaven or hell, or whatever. In unity, we'd probably say that heaven and hell are states of consciousness that we can experience in our lives today, and that wherever we are at, in sum total at the end of our lives, is probably what we're going to experience in the next whatever it is, incarnation or whatever. Charles Fillmore did say that he believed generally in reincarnation, but it wasn't one of his core teachings. Jesus consistently told people, don't worry about it. I am God. God is God of the living, not of the dead. So don't hassle around what's going to happen later. Get your life right now. And I'm a big proponent of that, because I think if you do that, then whatever happens next is going to be okay. But in my funeral services, memorials, I usually quote from the Bible and talk about Jesus's promise that there are many rooms in God's great house of life, and that there's that continuity, and we can trust that, and I believe that's to be true as well. So it's all a matter of consciousness. When I first came into unity, somebody came up to me and said, the 3 words you need to remember: life is consciousness. And it's probably true. That's the key to opening or closing many doors. So if your consciousness stays dark and limited, whoa, you're going to receive that. And if your consciousness opens to infinite possibility, you're going to receive that. And really, that's heaven and hell right there,
All these 5 fundamental principles.
Yeah.
It would seem to me that if you said to somebody in any of the major religions that you cover in the book, well, not any of them, but certainly the Abrahamic, the Western ones, and you said these 5 principles are found in your tradition, a lot of conventionally religious people would say, no, they're not. I don't see them. I go to church, I go to synagogue, I go to mosque. I don't see those. Did you have to search? Did you have to look in the corners to find those 5 principles in common in all the traditions?
Well, certainly not the first one, because all the Abrahamic religions, the people of the book, emphasize the power and authority and almightiness of God. Islam, they're particularly strong, but Judaism as well. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. So yeah, it's in all those, and I would say it's in in Hinduism, God is formless but takes many forms. He's the formless one, the undifferentiated one. Buddhism doesn't have a God as such, but the God is just a label for this essence, right? And this essence is the divinity of wholeness, of oneness. And I think Buddhism certainly understands that very keenly and has many names for it. Maybe Buddha, sunyata, emptiness, would be one, but it approaches it from a spiritual psychological viewpoint. The Buddhism, so it's a little different, but prayer is universal. Putting it into practice is universal. I mean, all religions emphasize giving alms and being kind to people, etc. And the law is consistent throughout all religions. The one that might be a hang-up is the second one, the nature of our divinity, right? And I talk about it in the book. Christians believe we are divine by adoption, many Christians, traditional Christians, through the blood sacrifice of Jesus. And we don't subscribe to that in unity, but I can understand what they're talking about. But we see it in a more universalist way, that it's not just the literal blood, but the life-giving energies that were in Jesus are also in us, But the divine is present in Judaism, certainly in Hinduism, Buddhism, Buddha nature, the Tao. So yeah, I think that you don't have to go far to find these principles alive and well in the religions. They may be phrased differently, but they're there, and I explain them in the book. So I didn't have to go far to find them.
Paul, one final question from me, and that is, what do you hope people to get from reading your book, Unity in World Religions?
Well, I hope that it's useful. I think from a purely unity audience point of view, there is no book quite like this in the books that have been written in unity so far. So it fulfills a need there for those people that want to see how unity fits into the rest of the pantheon of religions throughout the world. I also think it's valuable for people who are looking for unity and oneness, connectedness in a divisive world, which we're in right now. I think it would be helpful for those people. I think it's an affirmative book. I think if you're interested in a particular religion, you can find something there in it, even if you only want to read a couple of the chapters. And if you are a student of one religion but want to find out the correlation and commonalities with another, then it's useful for that too. It has a large bibliography. So yeah, which took a lot of work to put together, and a fairly big index for the size of book it is. So there's a lot of information jammed into that book. I can't believe how much information I was able to get in there, and not just the information, but my interpretation of it. I tried to consistently present it so that it makes sense. So I think it's meaningful to a lot of people. So, and I hope it sells well. Of course I do. But
well, you'll have the famous Spirit Matters bump in sales as soon as it's there.
Amen. Thank you, God.
One last quick question, Paul. Your last chapter is called The Future of Religion.
Yeah.
We have a couple of minutes. How do you see the future of religion? And is there anything we can do to make it better?
Well, human beings are always going to be searching for, where did I come from? Why am I here? Where am I going? Who am I? Those universal questions. And so there's going to be a future for religions, but I think there's some stresses that we're dealing with. People are tired of religion as such, like Dennis mentioned earlier. They call themselves spiritual but not religious. So there's that trend going on. Religions tend to renew themselves. That's the good side. I think some of the stresses are, how do we deal with artificial intelligence? That's huge, because as machines become self-aware, or they think they're self-aware, then they may have their own religion. They may have their own desire to be autonomous, and that's going to present some challenges around what's the nature of God, etc. Climate change is another stressor. There's lots of things that are going to be, and how many years can we live with Iron Age books? I mean, all the magnificent books of religion are great, but they were written 2,600 years ago, a lot of them, 2,000 years ago. So we've gone on from there, right? We have to have modern scriptures as well. Not to say that what we've got is bad, but we can't just have that. We progressed in so many ways. So that's another. How do we find these new revelations of divine truth? That's going to be interesting too. So there's lots of things. I'm an optimist, so I think all will be well. But there's many challenges that'll be exciting.
Great.
Thank you, Paul.
Again,
Right.
the book, Unity and World Religions, a great read and very thought-provoking. And it's a fun book to read with other people, because it's endless discussion that will come from the book.
Thank you. And there is a study guide too that's available on a PDF. If you'd like to get hold of that, if you're going to do it as a study or even as a class study, that study guide is very helpful, I think. So
all that
might
posted
get
up.
everybody.
Very good. Paul, thanks for coming back on the show. Good luck with
Thanks
the book.
so much. Thanks, Phil.
And
Thanks, Dan.
tune in to Paul's show on Unity Online Radio, and wonderful guests as we do here. Thank you all. See you next time.
Phil, that was Paul John Roach, the book Unity and World Religions. Very interesting. Obviously, he's studied all the religions, major religions, and with this desire to find unity, connection between them, and I enjoyed it, and I think his thinking is along the lines of what I'm hoping and thinking, and that is that religion is used to bring unity to people into the world as opposed to division. I think religion has often been misused, and it's often the basis of dispute and because of people's beliefs being different. So good message, excellent book, very thought-provoking, as I mentioned before.
And, we've talked on the show before about, he calls it the golden thread that runs through all religions. But what people like Houston Smith and Aldous Huxley called perennialism, or the perennial philosophy. In fact, we recently had Dana Sawyer on the show to talk about perennial philosophy from a scholarly point of view. And the distinction that's typically made, and I learned about this from Houston Smith when I was writing American Veda, that there's two aspects of any religion: the esoteric, where you find all the differences in belief systems and different views of history and different rituals and different dogmas and all that, where the division and sometimes the conflict arise. But then there's the esoteric. Did I say esoteric? Exoteric is the external. Esoteric is the inner experience that the religions at their best elicit in people. And that's where you find the unity. And making that distinction is very important, because when you talk about unity, people say, oh, bull, they're all different, and you're trying to make all the religions one, and it's airy-fairy, and it's not true. Well, no, we're not trying to make all the religions one. We're trying to point out that there is oneness, is continuity, and harmony at the depths of
Right.
inner experience.
It's an interesting, I wanted to comment on that. For instance, in Catholicism, which I grew up with, when I first had the sense of religions having a unified base, it's when I had exposure, and it was later in life, to like Trappist monks, those people in the clergy that were committed to developing their inner life, and the focus was internal dialogue, internal focus. And then you start understanding, and I think those folks themselves, when they talk, they saw that similarity with Hinduism, with Buddhism, with Jainism, with Judaism, with all the different major religions of the world, and even minor religions, that as one went toward the mystical or the less superficial, then there was a great similarity. If you stayed on the surface level in terms of rules, and this religion says you can't eat meat on Friday, and that religion says you have to worship on this day or that day, then it's like, oh, we have nothing in common. But that's very superficial. It's the internal. And we talked about ritual in this, and the value of ritual, as Paul was explaining, was in that it brought you toward some inner unifying experience that you could share with others. So I think that his talk, his book, very insightful.
Yeah, and it's
Your comment is very insightful.
it's a good contribution to the evolving understanding of what religion is and what it can be, because the whole subject of religion is under question now, as Paul brought out at the end of our interview, with people turning away from conventional religion in huge numbers. All the surveys show that. More and more people, especially young, identifying as spiritual but not religious, or not affiliating with a main.
So what does that ultimately mean, do you think, Phil? I think I have some idea, spiritual, not religious, that there's a common internal experience that we would,
and that you can find it.
Who cares what religion is built upon that? Yeah.
And inherent in that spiritual but not religious is a sense of spiritual independence. I don't want to be tied down. I don't want to be confined to the neighborhood house of worship or what my parents believed in. I want to be free to explore and find the truth in my own way. And now I think part of this is a function of technology and mobility. People have easy exposure to all the world's, mystical and traditional religious and philosophical belief systems and practices. It's so easy now. I mean, it was easier for us in 1968 or 1970 than it was for our parents, and certainly for their grandparents. I mean, throughout most of history, your religious teaching was whatever happened to be presented to you in your village, or whatever.
Right,
and
right.
Now,
I mean, if I want to find out about any religion, any group, no matter how small, I just go to Google, put it in, and it'll come up, and I can. And so technology has made it possible for us to look at different angles and different perspectives much more easily. He did say something interesting about technology. Nobody else has brought it up before, but it is something I've given some thought to, and that is, like with artificial intelligence, we may create robotic people that there's nothing theoretically that would prevent a machine from becoming self-aware. And then where does that fit into the whole avenue of?
What happens when one of the machines has a powerful mystical experience, and it changes the programming and says even becomes the Messiah among all the robots? Then what?
Yeah,
we have to remake the life of Brian.
Can a robot become the Pope? There's no really reason why it can't. Will there be will there be robots in rabbinical school and seminaries? I mean, I don't know. Yeah, we'll
or
see.
founding
I mean,
their
we would
own.
be around.
I am
Yeah.
I am the true intelligence. Follow me.
We're laughing about it now, but years from now, people may uncover our discussions and say, "Hey, they were
That's
really
right.
on top of it."
Future generations will see this moment and say they knew what was coming
Right, right.
because it happened
Talking
before.
of technology, speaking of technology, one thing I forgot to mention at the beginning, and now, please hit the subscribe button. Whether you're listening to us or watching us, hit that subscribe button. And again, if you want to contribute, we're not a nonprofit. It's not a donation, but it's a contribution. If you want to help keep us on the air and keep the archives open to the public for all time to come, then you can make a contribution. And you go to spiritmatterstalk.com and it'll explain what you can do there. And for those people that have done that, thank you very much. For those people that haven't done it, thank you for tuning in. We appreciate
Yeah.
you all.
And your contributions. We could be the answer to preventing an authoritarian theocratic takeover by robots in the future.
Right. We're working on it.
We
We're constantly
stand for
going.
unity in diversity. All
That's
right,
it.
Dennis.
We'll have a right. Till next time, Phil.
See you next time.